How's it going? What?
When I was selling cars back in the day, you would come down with the payment. And the way that they taught us, and I worked for AutoNation. I worked for Mullen X Ford in Amherst, which was shortly after bought by AutoNation. Yeah. AutoNation is this huge.
Well, it's an entire nation.
It's an entire nation of cars.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes, very dangerous.
Yeah.
So they had all these processes, and they take you through all this sales training, and they say you come down with the number, and your payment is $350, and you go over the buyer's order.
Yeah.
The price of the vehicle with the A plan is $26,000. Your trade is worth $15,000. You owe $18,000 on your trade. You roll over $3,000 of that negative equity. Brings your bottom line to, you go through all this, which equals, $350 a month for XYZ, a number of months, 60 months, whatever it is. Yeah. And then you just sit back.
Yeah.
Because their thought was whoever speaks first loses.
Yeah.
And that's what they taught.
That
so
is a
all
rule
that to
of
say is you
isn't
just lost the podcast big time.
It's okay.
You really messed it up.
It's not my first time.
I found that to not be true, though.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't, because people just sit there and look and stare and have questions, and I don't think that's how it works.
I think that works if you assume you're in an adversarial situation.
Right.
If you're genuinely wanting to help someone,
I
just don't see how those tactics apply every time.
So back in the day, this is like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
The buyer wasn't as educated. I mean, the internet was out. And you had like Kelley Blue Book and that kind of stuff. But, Carfax wasn't as much a thing.
Right.
And, we've just got more access to information now that, car buyers are more educated. But there was still the stigma when I was selling. I was in the used car side of.
Yeah, there's assumptions made.
Yeah, big time.
And I think some of those are still hold true for some places, but.
Yeah. That's why you have reviews like Yelp.
Right. Well, as I've shared my time in Texas, I worked with a lot of car salesmen doing the work that I did. And I found that a lot of them were just really good people trying to be good salesmen, but at the same time, like, you're a bad salesman if someone walks away buying something that they don't actually need.
Right.
Because they're not going to be satisfied.
Well, then Target is the worst salesperson in history. Yeah, because I go into Target, I'm like, just get grandma a birthday card.
Yeah.
And, you walk out of there with...
like a lamp.
Look at this. A pack of light bulbs is on sale.
That's right. We need that lamp.
Right.
And this Joanna Gaines book.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole section of fancy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's a plant there that would look great in our living room.
Yeah.
And I just can't... I can't do it. I think it's like $150.
Oh, is it?
For the fake plant.
You should get a real plant. Those are good for you. They make the air in your home nice.
Yeah, we'd have to do some. Henry's got wacky allergies.
Oh, that I forgot about that.
We got cats now. I don't try.
Yeah.
Cats eat stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Rachel got this cat brush to brush the cat. That's what those are for.
Is it called cat brush?
I don't know what it's called. Yeah, I do know what it's called. I think it's called the Furminator. As in a. People are.
F-U-R, right?
Yeah.
Not like firm.
Right.
But fur.
Furminator. Like that's... Arnold Schwarzenegger and,
Yeah.
Like, we got to get this fur out right now. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get over here, I brush you.
Yeah.
And so Rachel brushes, we got a black cat named Storm. Rachel brushes this cat. And, so she's medium length hair. And so, you get a wad of fur.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Furminator from when Rachel was selling me on it, you click this button and it kind of ejects the hair.
Yeah.
It helps push the hair out of the, whatever the bristles brushes are that they are removing the fur with on the brush.
Yeah.
So she ejects out. She got this wad of, it's probably about the size of like a plum is the way she's describing it. Decent sized plum. Puts it down on the ground, because she was brushing the cat and puts it down on the ground, goes to grab the other cat, and Storm just eats it. Eats her own ball of fur.
Well, she's like, I didn't get to throw that up yet.
And that's precisely what it is. I don't know if she thinks she's in the wild and she's got to cover her tracks.
That's
like
right.
the bears are going to find her.
Guys, the predators, they'll follow me.
Right. She just chomped, and Rachel looked down like, there, it's gone.
That's great.
So, yeah, I don't trust a real plant.
I found that pets do a lot of things that in the moment, what is it?
I thought we were rubbing knees, but it turns out it's this cord.
It is that cord.
Something kept grazing my knee. I was like, I don't know. Should we?
Is Jared messing
I
with
don't know.
me?
I think
Or
he's flirting. What's happening now? I don't know how long your leg hair is. I've never examined it.
Well,
So I thought maybe it was incidental.
it has been braided in the past.
You were imposing yourself incidentally on me through.
What would you do if I walked in wearing shorts and my leg hair was clearly braided? Like assume I got leg hair extensions or something like that.
Maybe. I don't even know how.
And is it humid in here? What is going on?
So things are messed up with the air
That's
right
true.
now. The office.
I wasn't
is
sure which
1,000
parts of the
degrees.
building.
Not this one. It's hot.
I think
Is it because we're rubbing knees? Is that what's going on?
It's warm in
You
here.
got me thinking about that braided leg hair.
I like how it's a Texan.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to follow suit.
That's good. Oh my. Oh my.
I don't know what I would do. I would ask why,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
because I think if your leg hair was long enough to braid
Yeah.
prior to you braiding it, we would have already had a discussion. I would have been like, why do you have all that? What's that for?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like you have.
What if I was just like, I'm trying to live a normal life, but I actually have a condition that causes my leg hair to just keep growing and growing and growing. So I've just tried to find ways of dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know? And so braiding it has been kind of a way of, taking ownership, having a little bit of control over my life.
I'd support you in that, but I'd also introduce you to pants.
Dude, it's like 87 degrees outside and you're like, you need to get back in your pants.
Well, you have to consider the needs of others above your own.
True. Yeah, prefer others.
Right.
Yeah, before
if
yourself.
you've got moccasin legs.
Moccasin legs.
Like if you've got moccasin legs.
Oh, man.
Did we just name it's a little early.
It's a little early. Let's give it time, but maybe
with snappy
that's
chicken.
a front runner.
It is
Moccasin legs. I feel so bad for the people who listen to this who,
Right.
like last week, you're saying someone literally had to shout the name of the episode across the gym to you, and you're just like,
Yeah. I was listening
boy.
to Penguin Flesh.
yeah.
I know. What was
No,
it?
it was Porcupine Fence.
Yeah.
So many animals.
Penguin Flesh was the review we
Yeah.
got. I was listening to your latest
That's
podcast,
right.
Penguin Flesh.
Penguin flesh.
Like of all the things you're going to review.
Well, we were talking. I remember why, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you were selling cars and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I was saying, I found that a lot of the salesmen and stuff are not like that. There's more like, let's strategize how we can serve customers better, that kind of stuff. And then actually one manager I had spoken with, he talked about how things, and he'd been in the game for a long time, and he talked about how it used to be the accumulation of information was kind of the strategy. Like you don't let people, even other salespeople, you don't let them know all the information. If you have all the information, you have power. And he said that's just not how it is, because now, like you said, the customer is informed, customer knows stuff, and they're going to be on you in 2 seconds if they get the feeling that you're just trying to manipulate them or whatever. So.
One of my favorite things about doing car sales, because you would work a lot of hours. I'd work several 12-hour days, like 3, 4 12-hour days, because you have to be there. Obviously, it's retail.
Yeah.
And so, unless you've been there for a long time and have a customer base. And I was at a Ford dealership, and this is Ford country. There's a lot of A-plan people that would come in, and that made the process really nice, but I was on used cars most of the time. Right. And so, I very rarely would get called over to the new car side. And so one of the things that was fun, and I was 19 when I was doing this, 19 and 20.
Wow.
Is I developed this thing I called just poor cliches. And I would try to see how many poor cliches I could use in the sales process without someone questioning what I meant. And, they'd look at a car and they'd be like, I don't know, there's a few, things about the vehicle, like it's probably going to need new tires, and I'd be like, we can sit there and talk about the new tires, but at the end of the day, this car is no different than a squirrel under the ice. You know what I mean?
Oh my!
And they would just be like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess. And,
So it's not even poor cliches. It's just random nonsense.
It's almost random nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would use the same ones so they became cliche to me.
Something about being knee high on a grasshopper.
Something like that. Squirrels under the ice.
A Michael Scottism.
Somewhat. Yeah. So that it was a super fun job. I actually just ran into a guy. I went to someone had invited me to a men's study this past week, and I went to it, and a guy named Harvey Whitfield that I worked with at Mullinex, 21 years ago, was there.
No way.
And I was like, "Is your name Harvey?" And he looked at me and he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Neal and Nemeth, we worked together at Mullinex." And he's like, "Oh my goodness, how you been?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I didn't know, you were walking with the Lord. When did you come to faith?" And he left working at the dealership. I went and drove truck, and he's like, "I found Jesus driving truck." He's like, I was by myself a lot, and that's when the Lord kind of pursued. And so it was kind of a cool thing. But it was a very fun job.
Yeah,
it was a lot of hours, and it served me well, in the car buying experience as an adult. Because I knew what to look for, and
that's good.
So it was good. So needless to say, whoever speaks first loses.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Should we welcome?
I'd like to.
We should. All right. Welcome to the Atrium, a Hope Christian Church podcast. I'm Jared, creative arts pastor here at Hope Christian Church. And you are.
And I'm cutting you off. I'm so sorry. My name is Neal.
Oh, it's okay. We don't have to do that.
No, I'd like to.
Do you want me to retry it?
No, I'm feeling good now.
Okay, cool.
Name is still Neal, lead pastor here at Hope Christian Church.
Didn't change in the last 10 seconds.
This is episode
30. What is going on?
I don't know.
I mean, this podcast is well into its adult episodes.
It is. Yeah, it's going to approach midlife soon.
What do you think the freak out will be? The midlife freak out will be for the
podcast? Probably needs new mics.
Yeah, probably.
These mics work fine, but
need to be like
all the other podcasts are getting
Ferrari
new mics.
red mics.
Right.
Younger mics.
Maybe Botox the table.
What would that even look like?
I don't know.
Just pillow top?
Botox the table. I feel like that
could be a
song.
That could be.
I don't know how.
It's cool. I like that.
I feel like it's might be a rap song.
Botox the table. Wow.
Botox the table.
That's cool. Let's think about that for a while.
Yeah. I'll write those lyrics.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. Your week going okay so far?
So yeah.
Yeah.
Kinda. Sunday, I was unusually exhausted on Sunday. I didn't sleep very well on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Rachel winds up having to sleep in Henry's room most nights because, he's just in that stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was restless. She was restless. We were in separate bedrooms. Henry was restless. So nobody slept well.
Yeah.
And then Sundays are just tiring anyways.
Yeah.
And so Rachel and I were just so unbelievably lazy on Sunday. We got home, and poor Henry, he's got no siblings, and we are his playmates. And so he's like, anybody want to ride scooters? And I'm like, dead to the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, buddy, I'm so sorry. I can't. I'm so exhausted. And he's like, well, do you want to? And then he started, it just got more and more reasonable. He's like, will you watch me? And I'm like, I'm not going, I'm hot. Like, just good old fashioned, what I consider to be bad parenting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just being lazy. And then Rachel, we were just both being lazy. And so at one point he was like, oh, I guess I can just watch my iPad. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Like, this is, I gotta get moving. So I'm like, but I didn't have the energy to scooter. Scootering is very fun, but it's tough as a 43-year-old to keep up with a 5-year-old whose body is just regenerating just over and over and over again. And so I'm like, let's go. Tell you what, it's Henry loves fans, and it's almost, we're moving into fall, and so there's fans on clearance everywhere.
Sure.
And he's got many fans and power strips. Yeah. And so his one power strip has 2 more spots open. So every day it's driving him crazy that those slots are open.
Gotta fill those up.
He wants those filled. And so he's like, 2 more fans. And so we try to, within reason, and make sure that we're not, spoiling him, but at the same time, he likes fans. Yeah. And so I'm like, why don't we go to Meijer and we'll get you a fan.
Yeah.
He's like, this is great. So I tell Rachel, she's like, okay, let's do it. So Rachel's upstairs, getting ready, getting shoes and all that kind of stuff. And I go to the garage, and I'm like, Henry, what car do you want to take? And he's like, let's take the Sentra. We got a Nissan Sentra. And so I walk out to the Nissan Sentra, and there's some like dirt, some schmutz on the bottom of the on the car.
Yeah.
And I go down, and I'm like, man, it's like sticky. It was like sap or something like that.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, well, I don't want that on the car. And Rachel's getting ready, and so I open the car door, and my wallet, my water bottle, and my phone in my hand. I put it on the roof of the car or whatever, and then open the door, and Henry, stay away from the road, stay with me. And he's like, what is this? I'm like, I don't know, schmutz. Which was interesting because he kept calling it schutz. And I'm like, you're really close to saying something. Let's not say any of that. Like, let's just call it dirt from here on out. Because he's like, did you get all that schutz off the car? And I'm like, oh boy.
Every time it's like, a little bit closer.
Schmutz, right. I think he knew what he was doing.
That's not what I said.
Right. I think he wanted to say the word.
Oh boy.
Probably. He heard it from his mother, I'm sure.
Right under the bus.
Right. That's fine.
She's like just living under that wheel.
Well, it's
wow.
Yeah, everything's fine.
All right.
So I get that clean, okay, and then he's pushing all kinds of buttons. Buddy, don't do that. Stay away. Finally get him in the car, going down the road on 90, and he's like, "Can we have the windows open on 90?" He likes the wind. Sure. So all the windows are down. My car has a sunroof, moonroof, or whatever. So that's open, and this car drives up next to me on the highway, honking their horn, and they're like, "Hey!" They got their window down. I was like, "Hi." I didn't know if they were from the church. I didn't know, what was going on. They're like, "Your cell phone is on the roof of your car." Now, I'm tooling, 65 miles an hour down 90 and have been for miles now.
Yeah.
And somehow this cell phone was just still on the roof of the car.
Isn't that just like leather?
It's just a leather case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe it was stuck in some of the schmutz.
It could have been in the schmutz.
That would have been ironic.
Well, the very schmutz I removed is the very schmutz that saved. Interesting. So I said to Rachel, I'm like, "Can you grab it?" So she just pops out the sunroof real quick, grabs it. And we're just like, man, so thankful. Like, can't believe it. Get to Meyer, and I'm like, oh, what else was up there?
Oh, no.
My wallet.
Oh, no.
Yeah, my wallet. So I thought, okay. I told Henry, I said, buddy, we're going to get to Meyer, and we're going to get you a fan. But right now, we need to just kind of retrace our steps real quick to see if we can find, Daddy's wallet anywhere. So we went back home and went the same way that we went, scouring the road, looking at it. Couldn't find it. Figured it probably flew off somewhere on 90. It was a windy day on Sunday anyways. So it probably flew off somewhere on 90. And I'm like, so I was telling Rachel, I'm like, this is such a pain. My driver's license, Social Security, my debit card, the church's card. We've got, a Lowe's card.
Yep.
We've got an Ashley Furniture card. Like, because all these companies are like 0% for 5 years. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, for real.
Right. This is free money. So I'm like, Giant Eagle card.
Yeah.
Kohl's Rewards.
Yeah.
Insurance. All that stuff. I'm just Speedway. Right. All of it. The picture you and I took at the Niagara Falls. That was in there.
Do you still keep that in there?
I do.
Oh,
your leg hair was gorgeous that day.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Well, it had kind of gotten tamed by the mist.
Well, and you were younger,
and then it puffed up.
And
it was
so
like
it was rich and dark.
Yeah,
less gray highlights in it. But that picture gone. So I was saying all this, and Henry was like, This is not good. He's like, I don't feel good about this. And I realized that I'm stressing him out. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, does anything hurt? Like, I'm trying to figure out, did he get sick from the East Wing already? Because he was just there 2 hours ago. And I'm like, is your belly hurt? He's like, my mouth feels funny. And I'm like, I wonder if he's having a little bit of anxiety. You get dry mouth and stuff. Yeah. And Rachel's like, why don't you pray and ask, God to bring back Daddy's wallet? And so he prays. And then a couple minutes goes by, he prays again. He winds up praying 3 times. And it's a very simple prayer. God, thank you for this day. Please help Daddy to find his wallet. Amen. Yeah. Okay. So we go everywhere and no wallet. Yeah. So I get home and I'm like, it's Sunday night. Can't get a hold of all the creditors.
Right.
But I'm like, I can call, we have the Amazon rewards card or whatever. So called and canceled my debit card. And just got the ball rolling. And then I'm like looking and it's like, okay, we got to get Henry to bed. I can finish this after we get Henry to bed.
Yeah.
So we go upstairs and we're giving Henry a shower. Henry gets out of the shower and, we hear the doorbell ring. And so I go downstairs and open the door and the guy goes, "Are you Neal?" And I said, I am. Do you have my wallet? And he said, I do.
Wow.
And I thought, that's interesting. And I said, how can I repay you? Thank you so much. What's your name? He said, my name's Chris. He goes, I'm the guy that honked at you on the road. And for your phone, he goes, I saw your wallet fly off. And he turned around, got off the exit, got on the exit on where we, on 611.
Yeah.
And walked on the highway to get my wallet.
Dude.
And then dropped it off. Isn't that remarkable? I mean, so kind, so thoughtful, doesn't know me from Adam.
Yeah.
And did that put himself in harm's way.
Yeah.
And he's like, I did the best I could to get everything. He goes, stuff was kind of scattered. And so, so when the wallet flew out, the cards flew out.
Yeah.
So he had to go and pick up individual cards on the highway.
This guy.
He said, can you check to make sure everything's in? And then he's asking me to hold him again. But I'm like, can I repay you? And then I'm thinking, what do I have for this guy? I don't have cash, like you want a protein shake or something, something I could do for you, get you a meal. Yeah. I wanted to get his information, but I don't also want to creep him out at the same time. And so it turns out he got my driver's license, my social security card was in there, the church's card was in there, my debit card was still in there. The only thing I was missing was like the Giant Eagle, the Heinz card, and then a Discover, Ashley card, and Lowe's card. So I had to call and get those. Yeah. Get those canceled.
Wow.
And so I ran upstairs, and Henry was in the bathroom. Rachel's drying him off, putting lotion on, all that stuff. Yeah. I said, Henry, guess what? And he's like, what? I'm like, Jesus answered your prayer. And I showed him the wallet, and the joy on him was it was such a cool thing. And so my week is going well. We're navigating right now how to pay for things. So I've been, I had Rachel's debit card, and she has a Discover card, I think, that she was just going to use. Right.
Person uses one. Right. Yeah. We've had to do that before. Sarah's debit card will get stolen.
Really?
Not the card itself, but the information. So last night she got a text late at night that was like, hey, are you trying to make this purchase? And she's like, nope. So I had to block it, replace it. Yeah. Chase does a good job of like reaching out.
They do. The alerts and everything on the phone.
And anytime it's happened one time before where someone had went shopping in San Francisco or something like that. I'm like, that wasn't either of us. Right. So we called them and they're like, yeah, that's not you. So they have never like, well, are you sure that wasn't you? They've always been cool about just locking it down. And
one time I got a charge from a Walmart in Michigan. And so I called Rachel and I said, hey, did you go to a Walmart in Michigan for anything? And she's like, I was like, I wasn't really asking. I'm like, why'd you have to think about that? She's like, oh, no, I mean, I don't know. She's like, it was just an odd question. I'm like, is your other family in Michigan?
Yeah, that's right. Your secret family.
Rick.
Oh, no, not Rick.
Rick.
The sad thing in those situations is that the vendor who like kind of services the I don't know, the transaction, if it's a store, if it's a Subway, I think Subway was last time for us, it was a Subway. They're the one that loses out because the person got their sandwich and then we get our money back.
Right.
But then they just kind of, it's sad.
It is. It is.
So anyways, should we do some meeting and greeting?
I would love to.
I love this part. It's time for our favorite segment, meet and greet. Ba-da-ba-ba. Oh, man. Yeah, every time. The 30th. No, that wouldn't be. Did we do it the first episode?
We did, accidentally.
Did we?
Yeah, if you go back and listen to episode 1.
Which I haven't done it on, I don't know.
I think we did.
I think that's amazing.
Well, I don't know. When you get to be in your 30s.
Yeah.
Well, you're freshly in your 30s, kind of.
Yeah, I've been in for a while now. Yeah. Not super deep yet, but
1 year, right?
You're
31.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Year and a half, something like
that. Year and a half. Yeah.
What
do you got? You got anything?
So this is loosely, well, not loosely, but this is somewhat connected to actually one of the questions we received. And I thought this would be really funny since we're kind of broaching the subject today. Why not just talk about it?
Yeah.
So it's somewhat related. You'll understand. So my question for you is this. You grew up in a Christian household.
I did.
With a pastor for a dad.
I did.
And I did the same thing. My question for you is, Did you celebrate Halloween or did you do a Christian alternative?
We did not celebrate Halloween, and we did no Christian alternative.
Really?
Yeah, it was just another day.
Yeah.
It was another day. When my parents were, still married, we did nothing for Halloween. My parents split in 87, November of 1987, and I was 8 at the time. And we moved to a trailer park in Elyria. Mm-hmm. We lived with my mom. The court awarded custody to my mom. And then, we did the visitation thing with my dad, my 2 sisters, and I.
Yeah.
And I remember begging my mom, Halloween. And we didn't have any money. Like, my mom was in, just getting into the workforce.
Yeah.
She had worked for and with my dad and was the primary, caregiver in the home. And my dad, was running a church and running businesses at the time. And so, and child support was not what it was these days. And, so she didn't have much money and didn't have money for costumes or anything like that. Didn't have money to really hand out candy. And, we were living in this trailer park. And so finally, convinced her to let me go as long as there was no, need to spend any money.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what to go as.
Yeah.
I had seen, I think it was Die Hard, bits and pieces of Die Hard.
Mm-hmm.
Part of being 8 and your mom being a single mom working full time was I had very little supervision other than my sisters who
You're just watching Die Hard every day.
I'm just watching Die Hard, man. Like I'm going over my friend's house and they've got the VHS tape of Die Hard.
Yep.
And they're like, "You want to see this?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Sounds awesome.
And I think the bad guys, I don't know what nationality the bad guys were, but I think maybe Russian, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I had this, I told my mom, I was like, all right, I'll come up with something.
Yeah.
And so I had some Depp hair gel.
Okay.
And I wet my hair and used a hair dryer and blew dry it back so it was slicked back.
Yeah.
And then took a lot of Depp.
Wow.
And just, combed it back. Had a pair of black sunglasses, wore black pants, a black shirt, and then I had a black, it was like a 3/4 length trench coat.
Oh, wow.
And I decided to go as a Russian.
Wow.
Yeah, that's, I'm 9.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I went as a Russian for my first Halloween. And
cool.
People kept asking me, "What are you?" Turns out I invented the character Neo.
Oh,
I didn't realize that.
That's what it sounds like.
From The Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, accidentally.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the first thing that I went to. And then the next year, we took a cardboard box because we had to get a new dryer or something like that, and put aluminum foil on the front. And I went and a couple of buttons, and I went to Timmy the TV because we cut holes in there for my head.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I got the junk kicked out of me.
Oh no!
Yeah, some kids were like, "This is stupid," and they beat me up.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, this is all true.
Oh my gosh!
So this is the next year. I'm like, I think 10 at this point. So they're like, "Timmy the TV," and they just destroyed me. Like,
wow.
My sister had spent all this time, putting this together. I think it was Nikki that did it, and Nikki or Natalie, one of them. And so got beat up, pushed me down, just destroyed my costume. So I'm like out trick-or-treating for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We got like 2 hours left.
Did you know these kids, or they're just some random?
So I knew one of them, but they had their friends over to the trailer park and so the kid that I knew was not the one doing it. It was his friends that were doing it.
I feel like we could probably, if we were persistent, could probably track down whoever it was.
Yeah, probably not worth it.
No.
Let me finish the story.
Okay.
I've done enough to these men.
Okay.
So these guys, beat me up. I'm on the ground, and I'm like, I've got an hour and a half left of trick or treating, and I was furious.
Oh yeah,
I was absolutely furious. Like I cried at first, and then it turned into rage.
Yeah.
And so I was I was watching a lot of '80s action movies, and Commando was just my jam.
Oh yeah,
Schwarzenegger's Commando, and in Commando he's got this shed where he's got all the knives and the guns and the grenades and all that stuff, and he's got his vest and he's sitting there suiting up.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to commando these kids. So I go home and I go to the back of my closet and I pull out the Russian outfit.
Oh boy.
And I go and I wet my hair and I slick it back and I get the sunglasses. And kids that are listening, do not do what I did. This was not honoring to the Lord in any way, shape, or form. But the Russians showed up, and I went and I tracked these kids down and kind of picked them off one by one.
Really?
Yeah. And I was a very fast kid.
Yeah.
Fast runner.
Yeah.
And everybody had pillowcases. This is what the neighborhood did.
Yeah.
And so I would just sprint by them, grab their pillowcase, and take off. And then these guys weren't familiar with Twin Lakes. There was a giant pile of woods in the middle of all of it, and I would just run through the woods, drop their pillowcase off, and it was literally,
dude.
I did this to four out of the, I think, 6 kids that were there.
What'd they do?
They screamed and they tried to chase after me, but they couldn't catch me.
Yeah, because you're so quick.
Well, the Russian was quick.
The Russian is quick.
The Russian was quick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they didn't know it was me because they had just beat up, me as Timmy the TV.
Yeah.
And so slick back hair and glasses did it. So, yeah. So needless to say, I don't want to track them down.
It's crazy.
I took all their candy.
They were mean and I thieved.
This is why sometimes when Chad's like, he struck me as a bully when I first met you. I was like,
about
no.
That.
Well,
no.
I didn't think so. I felt like I was justified in that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's right.
No,
I'm not saying it's okay.
I should say justified, but yeah, it's understandable.
It's understandable.
Yeah. I didn't make the first move.
Exactly.
I was like,
it was retaliatory.
Just the TV, and they're like, you're dumb.
Well, they poked the bear.
They did.
They Pearl Harbored you.
Let that be a warning to all.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're the sleeping giant.
I was. Yeah.
So, anyways.
So I'm assuming no trick-or-treating at all.
No. So growing up, Halloween was the night where you don't let your black cat out because a witch might find them and use them to, I don't know, create a potion or torture them or, I don't know, cast spells on the city. I don't know.
I have to keep that in mind for Storm.
What was that?
I'll have to keep that in mind for Storm.
Yeah, that's right. Cat. Yeah. You do not put your porch light on because then all the trick-or-treating devil worshippers will come to your door.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And then what our church started doing was kind of an alternative on the same night to, rather than going to door to all of your neighborhood witches and getting all of their evil demonic candy, you can come to the church and see a bunch of really cool moms and dads dressed up as Bible characters.
Okay.
And play some games.
Yeah. I'm sensing the sarcasm in your voice.
Well, you understand why when I tell you what they called it. It was called Hallelujah Night.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't understand how they got anyone to show up at this.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if we weren't doing trunk or treat?
Did they spell it Hallelujah or was it Hallow?
No. They had
try to be
they had
cutesy with
no marketing bone in their body.
Okay.
It was literally Hallelujah Night.
Hallelujah Night. Okay.
And then they changed it to Harvest Carnival, which is a little bit better. That's a little less cheesy.
I find the word carnival to be terrifying.
Really? You think of clowns?
Yeah. I just think of carnival and I just hear that music in the background. And
that's kind of, there's a warble to it that quickly turns nightmarish.
Harvest Festival,
that'd be fun.
That would be less terrifying to me.
Yeah, so that was kind of it. So I dressed up as various Bible characters. I never really did I never went to the store and got like a cool thing.
Well, they probably don't sell a whole lot of Samson.
I was a pirate once. Actually, no, I was a cowboy and then I was a pirate. So I take it back. I did get to dress up as some cool stuff. But it was never like the door-to-door thing was like a no-no. Because everyone's going to, either it's going to be a witch, a warlock, or a drug dealer who thinks it's a good idea to just give out his product to a bunch of children. Yeah. Because I guess that's how drug dealing works. Only on Halloween, never on another day of the year. So anyways, good times. Yeah, so I...
You're snarky today.
A little snarky. Yeah. I'm just thinking a lot about it.
Probably should have workshopped this before.
I guess so. Uh-oh, Jared's rage is coming out again.
To lay on my couch for a little bit.
I need to talk.
And another thing.
Hear me out. My childhood. Yeah, so anyways, I'm trying to think back like what my favorite outfit was. It sounds like your favorite outfit was the Russian.
Wrong. My favorite outfit was...
Did you just say outwit?
I did.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, I leaned forward and then my mouth went on the mic. And I realized if I said the F, I was going to bite down. on the microphone, which I'm just not comfortable doing.
Yeah, it's
so I said
weird.
My favorite hour. So as to prevent germs from spreading from.
Trying to think of one of mine. Anyways, it's okay.
Please.
No. I was saying
okay.
times I've just stuff has come out of my mouth that wasn't like what I meant to say. It's interesting. Go ahead.
Batman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Yellow Barrel of Magic in North Ridgeville.
Cool.
And I was 19. Yeah. 19, 20, right around there. And spent like $200 and rented the full rubber suit.
Dude.
Yeah.
Was
I think
awesome?
I've talked about this. I went through
I don't know,
maybe
man.
not on the podcast. It was amazing. I was very method that night.
Yeah.
So the whole night, which was driving everyone crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you would have only had the Michael Keaton Batman in mind, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, him and Val Kilmer at that point.
So I guess this would have been, right around 99.
Yeah, so you would have had Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you would have had George Clooney, too.
Right, but I was all Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And so, the whole night I was just, everybody was like, who is that? Because, I painted underneath my eyes. Like, it was the whole.
You went,
I did the whole thing. And wound up, I was in this neighborhood in Amherst.
Yeah.
And wound up straying from the party in wanting to explore the rest, because this was a kind of a party neighborhood, and there was a bunch of Halloween parties going on. So I just started walking into houses, and everybody would be like, hey, Dan,
That's
Dan,
right.
is that you?
I'm remembering
yeah,
now.
Yeah. And I'd be like, yep, yeah, it's me. And then I, slid down the stairs. So that was my favorite one.
That's the one where you like
as a kid
screwed
though.
up
Right.
Was it the carpet?
The white hardwood.
That's right.
Yeah, floor. Yeah.
It,
So
what, it left like black streaks or something?
a streak, because I saw the Joker walk by, and so I dove headfirst down the stairs. And I was like, Joker.
What did this individual do?
The Joker?
Yeah.
So
Did they respond? Like, did they get into it with you?
No, they didn't even look at me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they walked by this. It was literally just walked by the stairs, and I just dove down it.
It was kind of for your own amusement at that point.
Most of what I've realized I've done in life has been for my own amusement. I don't think anyone else cares for what I do.
That'd be so frustrating if you went to all the effort of really just going for it and not even acknowledged by your arch nemesis.
But I've got the story,
Yeah.
but it turns out nobody cares about that either.
Well, I like.
This is the second time I forced it down your throat in the listeners.
I'm like asking follow-up questions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was as an adult, that was kind of the favorite thing. But as a kid, the Russian was my go-to.
yeah, that's cool.
The evil,
So threatening.
candy stealing Russian.
Yeah. Well, that would have been the tail end of the Cold War, right? So
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
a little bit of that.
Right. I would just take all the candy and store it in my missile silos. That's what I did.
In that clump of trees, a
Right.
little bit of forest. Oh, that's funny.
These kids would be like, "Where's the candy?" I'm like, "I'll never speak.
That's right.
The candy's gone.
We will ask the questions.
Don't worry about your candy.
Oh, that's good.
It is gone now."
Mm.
Yeah. So I would do that whole thing.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Let's open up this question, because we did get a question about.
Yeah, we did. You want to just go ahead and
Let's do it.
Jump in?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. Here's the question. So I think this may be a gray area question, and it's something my family has been going back and forth on for years since we've had kids. What is your take on Halloween as far as should we, as followers of Jesus, participate in it or not? I'm referring more to dressing up in costumes and going trick-or-treating. For us, the more we've learned about the origins and what the Bible says, we've felt convicted in participating in any of it. It's been difficult with our oldest son being in school now, and then I know a lot of churches do their own take on it too. I've heard ex-Satanists say how demonic the day is and how there are people who literally cast spells on the candy at grocery stores, etc., and how it's like telling Satan it's okay to celebrate him for a day. I guess I'm just torn on how to feel about this. Our family and friends seem to love this day and season, and it has never sat well with me or my husband. We usually sit out on adult costume parties and get-togethers, and we tried to avoid dressing up our kids, but once they knew about Halloween, they wanted to dress up because they do at school, and our family all celebrates it too. Just curious on your thoughts. Boy, I don't relate to that question at all. I'm just kidding. We grew up with that kind of stuff. What was it for your family? Like, what was the fear? Was it kind of similar?
So yeah, the from what I can remember, I mean, and I was so young, and Dad, I know you listen to this, and so if I'm projecting things on you, I apologize. But the idea is that it was just a day that celebrated evil.
Yeah.
And so his thought, and I think my mom's thought at the time, although he was, more vocal about it, was, we're not going to participate in something that is a celebration of evil or had its origins in something that's pagan.
Yeah.
And so that was it. It wasn't necessarily because there were stories of people putting things in candy and razor blades and just, the danger
needles,
of it.
Razor blades, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
glass.
Yeah, that's what it was for us. What about for you?
It was similar. It was just kind of, I don't remember hearing like an actual well-rounded argument.
Yeah.
But then again, I was like 5.
Yeah.
I'm not no parent is gonna sit down and be like, well, here's the theological blah 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 blah, or here's the history blah 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 blah. But it was kind of similar, just a general like, this is a day celebrating evil. People are up to no good.
Yeah.
We're not going to participate. That kind of thing. Again, it was like, this. I always thought that this is the one day of the year that witches come out of their, I don't know, whatever they live in.
Yeah, some of that was communicated. That the demonic influence and demonic activity around Halloween was heightened.
Mm-hmm.
That was some of the takeaway that I had, as a young kid, and some of the superstitions surrounding what took place with that within Halloween and the practices there. And then as I grew older, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I didn't care because I was living life. I was partying anyways. Like Halloween was my problem.
Yeah.
Getting drunk and drugs and like that was my problem. And so I wasn't overly concerned about it. And when I moved into ministry, we started doing a trunk or treat event here at the church.
Yeah.
And I was leading worship at the time and had no say in anything.
Yeah.
And started to do a little bit of research on it and just try to land in a place that I felt like I was honoring the Lord.
Yeah.
And we have trunk or treat coming up here in a couple of weeks. What are your thoughts? What do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in that, and then I came to this point in my life where I just was kind of similar, but not necessarily like doing the same things in my life, but just kind of this point where I was just like, I'm done living in all this like almost like superstitious fear about things.
Right.
Like it didn't make any sense to me. And so, I mean, even this morning I was reading this question. I just did like cursory research, and there's nothing conclusive about the history of Halloween. There's all kinds of different theories and stuff, and how it ties to maybe like the Celtic festival of Samhain, which is basically the end of summer going into the fall, and it's the separation between the bright the bright seasons of the year into the dark seasons of the year, which is winter, days are shorter, that kind of thing. And so the theory there is that at that time, the veil between this life and the next, or this it's thinned, and so now the spirits on the other side can roam, that kind of thing. Dead relatives can come back, and that's why we set out food, that's why we do different things. And then the more I was researching, I'm like, well, that's not even conclusive. That could be the fact that All Saints Eve, or All Hallows Eve, which is the eve to All Saints Day, which is largely came about from the Catholic Church during the first 1,000 years after Christ. Like before 1000 AD, these festivals are already kind of in place in the Catholic tradition, and so the theory is that these theories about the kind of pagan roots of Halloween and stuff really largely came from those Irish and that region of Europe, those immigrants coming over and kind of making it their own thing. And then you look at the history of what the Catholic Church was doing. I mean, much of it had to do with, the whole dead, and that aspect of it really largely came from, views on purgatory and dead saints that, let's pray for them. Let's, and so jack-o'-lanterns, that kind of thing. Some believe that those were meant to, memorialize the dead, and like, this is the face of someone, let's pray for them and let's hope that they get out of purgatory soon. So a lot of it had to do with indulgences and a lot of the abuses in the Catholic Church at that time. And so that's a lot of the reason why some people believe that Martin Luther decided to pin, his 95 thesis on that day, or his 95 theses on that day, because he was addressing specific things associated with indulgences and stuff in the Catholic Church, where the Catholic Church was saying, hey, you can pay us for dead relatives who are in purgatory and you'll help them get to heaven sooner, or you can pay on seriously on your behalf, for your soul, that kind of stuff. And so,
Siri, make note, business idea. Sell baptistry water to Hope Christian Church.
There are some reasons why we shouldn't be doing that. Anyway, so all that's to say is, like, there's nothing super conclusive about all of this. Lots of people disagree with other people over here, and there's different theories because there's just nothing super conclusive about the roots of different aspects of Halloween and where different customs and traditions came from. Bonfires, candy, treats, that kind of stuff. Even in the Catholic Church, this idea of All Hallows Eve and then All Saints Day being the next day, some of it had to do with All Hallows Eve being, the night that evil tries for the very last time to conquer
Purge night.
Purge night, my goodness. And so people would dress up because they were mocking evil. They were mocking the devil. They were mocking and just saying, with the victory of Jesus, like, what are you even doing? Like, and so it was kind of like dress up in silly costumes, dress up in silly, like, devil costumes to make him look stupid, and some think that that's where, like, the red devil outfit came from, because clearly that's not what he looks like. But everyone knows, if you're reading scripture, that Satan's biggest thing was his pride, and so to hurt his pride, to mock him by making him look stupid. And so that's even some of my reading, like, people were pointing to the fact that in a lot of older churches, you'll see gargoyles. What are gargoyles? They look like these scary, creepy looking things sticking their tongues out and stuff, but they're not supposed to be demons. They're supposed to be mocking and basically sticking your tongue out at the devil, kind of thing. Like, you have no power here. Like, what are you even doing? Jesus has won. And so that's kind of part of, that's one aspect too of, like, that's actually a really cool aspect to Halloween, is this mocking the enemy and saying Jesus is the final victor.
Is this why you keep coming to me with gargoyle designs for worship?
I just think it'd be really good.
Yeah. You're always like, I want to spice up the stage. I'm like, what kind of LEDs? And you're always like, gargoyles.
How weird would that be?
What would be weird if I just, and when David was, doing your job, I would come in and things would just be screen gone, things painted. Yeah. What would be great is to just walk in, there's the gargoyles.
Not one, right? Many.
Multiple gargoyles. We really want to mock the evil.
Yeah, there you go. So there's aspects to it that I think are really cool. So I think the thing that comes down to it is a lot of people are afraid that they're accidentally going to celebrate paganism. They're accidentally going to participate in paganism. Or if it has pagan roots, why would we be trying to participate in that? We should reject that and not participate. And so to that, I'd say, like, there's multiple things that, one, you can't look conclusively at history and say it's specifically pagan. You can't say that it's specifically like a demonic or witchcraft or that kind of stuff, because there's roots to it everywhere. Just like anything else in America, it's a conglomeration, it's a melting pot of all these different things. And so I'd say that I think it comes down to conscience, because on the one hand, you have biblical, grounds for saying it's acceptable sometimes to take something that even had like a secular root and taking it and using it for the kingdom of Jesus. One prime example of that is in John 1, where he's using the word, the logos, the word. Mm-hmm. That's not a Christian word. That's a Greek philosophical word that was, understood as like, for Greek philosophers at the time, they use that to describe, kind of the order of the universe, the order of things. And so John is saying, hey, we know who that is. That's Jesus. And he came and dwelled among us in flesh, and now we can know him. Yeah. Another example of that is Paul, when he's, at Mars Hill, and he's talking about, hey, I see you have all these different, idols and these different, altars and stuff. And you have this one to the unknown God. Well, I know who that is, and he's greater than all the other gods. And then he uses that to argue with them and kind of convince them of the gospel. But then he also is like referencing a philosopher and then a Greek poet, you know what I'm saying? So there's kind of groundwork laid for us to feel like, when we're careful, there's nothing necessarily wrong with redeeming things. Yeah. But that's assuming that it's something that needs redeemed at all. rather than it's just a mixture of all these different things. So again, I think it comes down to conscience. I think you have to wade into it and really do your research carefully. But I don't think we can just assume based on tradition or superstition, that something is automatically wrong. Like, look into it and see what's going on with that and look at the roots of it. But the reality is that Jesus is the ruler of all seasons. He's the ruler of the earth. He's the king, and he's one. And so we don't need to be afraid that Satan is going to get us or anything like that. Certainly we're at war spiritually, but ultimately, we are, we don't need to be afraid that we're accidentally gonna,
stumble upon sin.
That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's good. I think, one of the things that I did in the Grace series is, pose a question. And so if we can, we'll just take what this listener has and say, is it okay to celebrate Halloween?
Yeah.
And the answer is sometimes.
Yeah.
The answer is sometimes. So when is it not okay to celebrate Halloween? And I think if you start to lean in to the evil possibilities of Halloween, and there's not a lot of data out there, but crime doesn't increase significantly during Halloween. Demonic activity does not increase. There's no reason for that. That you see demonic related crime, meaning people that are claiming that they were doing this for, doesn't seem to. There's not this massive increase. You've seen some spikes here or there, but they're pretty incidental.
Yeah,
and so. If Halloween, if you lean into the evil, if it becomes idolatry, if it's poor stewardship, Halloween is a billion dollar industry. It's the second most celebrated holiday, and I'm air quoting holiday, there is in money spent.
Yeah.
And so, if you're out there spending $200 on a Batman costume, but like we talked about weeks ago, your neighbor's got a tax bill that's $200 that you could help out, and you choose to get the Batman costume. Well, that's probably maybe poor stewardship, and you should think about reallocating those funds.
Yeah,
I think what you said there is important, because if this particular listener, if this family feels convicted enough, then don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of Mars Hill, the pastor of Mars Hills Church, or what used to be Mars Hill Church, was a guy named Mark.
That's a different Mars Hill, but
I understand. But it's the same two words.
It is.
Speaking of the planet Mars and that hill behind my house.
That's right. It's falling apart.
I always stand on that hill when I look at Mars in my telescope. But Mark Driscoll, listen, there's a lot to Mark Driscoll. But Mark Driscoll did have some things that were pretty on point.
Yeah.
And language that he used is you can either receive something, you can reject it, or you can redeem it. And so I like that you use that language. If you feel the Holy Spirit is pressing in on you to reject it and you're not comfortable with it, that's not sinful for you to reject it. It's not a requirement by law.
Yeah.
If you feel like you can receive Halloween and dress your kids up, appropriate for those that are of young adult and adult modest, right? Because I've been at Halloween parties in Kent. There's not much left to the imagination.
Sure.
And so it needs to be modest. It still needs to honor the Lord. You don't want to celebrate or honor evil.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about a couple of scriptures here because they're two scriptures that are, these are the two that are mostly used when it comes to defending the position that it's a sin to take your kids trick-or-treating. Was that?
Yeah. Oh, it's just a text.
Okay, I didn't know if that was our...
It's a weekly occurrence.
That's how it goes. So if you want to reject it, you can reject it. If you want to receive it, I think within reason, as long as it doesn't go against Scripture, you can receive it. And if you want to try to redeem it, which is part of what we do here at Hope with Trunk or Treat, is give people a nice, safe environment where families can feel free to participate. We do put rules on it. We've talked about it. Like, this is a spooky-free event. Nothing spooky, nothing evil. Modesty is demanded in this event.
Yeah,
and so we try to redeem it.
Yep.
So when is it sinful to celebrate Halloween? I think if you're certainly involved in any type of illegal activity, anything that's violates God's law, anything that is indecent or immodest, inappropriate, and poor stewardship. And I could probably keep going with that.
Right.
I think part of the issue that people might feel is that, although the research isn't conclusive, there are a lot of people that do really believe that it has pagan roots. And so if it does have, let's assume that it does have pagan roots, and we know that, are we okay to participate in that? And again, that's, I think, between you and the Lord. Scripture doesn't, there's no scripture in here. It's like, listen, when it comes to Halloween, don't celebrate it. But there are a lot of things, and I took some notes. There are a lot of things that have pagan roots that we just have leaned into.
Yeah.
For example, if you have a cat in your home, like the root of that and the celebration and the first domestication of cats that we are really truly aware of is from Egyptian culture. And there was an Egyptian goddess, a feline goddess, Bastet, and the idea is that a cat was magical. And so you brought the cat into your home, and it kept evil spirits away, and it was a sign of good luck, or it would bring you good luck rather.
Yeah.
And so if that, literally having a cat in your home has pagan roots. And so when we go to the APL to get a cat, do we feel that same conviction?
Yeah.
The days of the week. Monday is named after the moon goddess, a pagan moon goddess. Friday is named after the pagan god of love. Months of the year, June is named after a pagan god. Nike, the company Nike. Nike is a god. It's the god of victory. And so the swoosh, the god Nike's one of the symbols was wings, and the swoosh is marked after the wing. Do we have these same convictions, or do we dig deep and not wear Nikes because of these things? Easter.
Yeah.
The name Easter comes from a German pagan goddess, and it was the goddess of fertility. And so the practice of coloring eggs and laying them before this goddess of fertility was to hopefully encourage pregnancy. And the list is really endless. There's a lot of things that we do that have pagan roots. And so there's a difference between knowingly, intentionally, willfully, celebrating evil, and knowing that this, is something that cannot be redeemed. And then going, okay, this is what it was, maybe thousands of years ago, not what it is now. So what Rachel and I have decided in our house is that Henry can dress up.
Yeah.
I think if you are a parent that wants to enjoy the Halloween or trick-or-treating, I think it's okay to do that as long as it's not violating Scripture.
Yeah.
In any of those areas that we talked about, being immodest, indecent, poor stewardship, all those things, I think you move forward with cautionary wisdom. Go vet your neighborhood. Vet your neighborhood. Before you take your kid out one year, you go out by yourself.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, this house is the house that they've got a graveyard in their front yard. So let's not go by the Smith's house. Or you know what? This is the Johnson's house, and nobody's wearing any clothes. Right. So we're not going to go there. So you figure out in your neighborhood, you move forward with cautionary wisdom. Yeah. You keep things PG. You keep things G for your kids. Yeah. And you can enjoy the kind of the tradition of it. That's what we've done with Henry. Yeah. And when Henry's old enough to explain it to him, then we'll explain to him, the potential roots of it. Yeah. But you think about Christmas and some of the pagan roots from Christmas. I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah. So this listener writes, for us, the more we've learned about the origins, and we've kind of covered some of that and what the Bible says, we have felt convicted in participating in any of it. And so I don't know specifically what references they're referring to, but there are two, one in 1 Corinthians 10 and one in Ephesians 5, that seem to be the soapbox verses for the argument that it's that Scripture prohibits us from participating in that. And so I wanted to just address that specifically make sure that we are reading these and putting these in the context. So 1 Corinthians 10, Paul is speaking obviously to the Corinthian church. He's warning against idolatry. And there's a bunch of different places I can pick this up. But verse 21 seems to be the marker. So let me give it a little bit of context. He goes on to talk about getting... I'll just start. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea. Verse 2, and all baptized into Moses and in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, these things took place as examples for us, that we may not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the age has come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with temptation he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure. We've talked about that verse a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Talking about communion, right? The Lord's table. Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we are all partakers of the bread. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. Here we go. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? And then he moves on to a different section. So verse 21, you can't drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. The idea is that Halloween is a demonic holiday. And so we should not participate in it in any way. In context, this is not what Paul is talking about. It's a bit of a leap. He's literally talking about eating the food that was sacrificed to pagan idols and participating in the worship of pagan idols. You can't do and then show up to Sunday morning services in Corinth and participate in the Lord's table. Yeah, you're double-minded. Yeah. So you can't do both. Jesus would say you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both God and money. You can't do two types of worship. Participate. So the cup of the demons and the cup of the Lord is talking about the sacrificial meals. Yeah, I remember we talked about last week that meal in Jewish culture was a big deal. Sure. Same thing happened when they were celebrating and venerating and worshiping these demonic idols. So we can't really take that and go, well, Halloween's a demonic, because first of all, like we just talked about, we're not quite sure what the origin is. There's certainly evil activity around it, right? But is that what's happening now? Yeah. And in my experience, that isn't what's happening now. Yeah. So this isn't talking about Halloween. Is not talking about not participating in anything that's evil. It's talking about, in that sense of Halloween being evil in the origin. It's very specific narrative. The other one that is often cited is Ephesians 5:11. Yeah. Let me turn to it. So Ephesians 5:11 says, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. And so I think when we hear that word darkness, we think of, demons, the dark powers of this world. You think about, Harry Potter, the dark arts. You think about the Darth Vader, the Dark Lord. Yes, the Dark Lord of the Sith. The Dark Lord of the Sith. So But that's not necessarily what that is talking about either. Let's go back to verse 1. Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you as is proper among the saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead there should be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure or is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light. You've been redeemed, right? Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. There's that verse.
Yeah.
So the works of darkness are sin. It's just sin.
Yeah.
It's sin. It's not speaking about demons. It's not speaking about demonic
specifically like witchcraft.
Right. Yeah. It's not. It's sin in general, sexual immorality, all that kind of stuff. And then if you kind of keep reading, for it's shameful to even speak of such things that they do in secret, but when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible, for anything that becomes visible is light. Yeah. And so it goes on later on, and don't get drunk with wine. That's debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. We talked about this in the Psalms series. So in context, the idea of unfruitful works of darkness isn't talking about, demonic activity.
Yeah.
Although demonic activity, divination is certainly sinful. It's just one of the many sins. So unfruitful works of darkness could be, celebrating Halloween as a means to celebrate darkness and evil and gore and all that. You can make it sinful, but I think there is a way to redeem Halloween. And again, specifically for us, Rachel and I, this is something that we're okay with Henry doing now. Henry wants to be a hot dog this year.
Yeah.
And, there may be a day where Henry comes up to me and he's like, I want to be the Russian. And then I look at him and I say, like, I've been waiting for this moment.
That's right. You take him upstairs.
All my life.
The chest at the foot of your bed with the false bottom.
Right.
Here it is.
Well, I open that up and there's a staircase. And it just goes down further and further, and I show him the Russian's lair.
That's fantastic. I like that.
I've been training.
Wow, that's fantastic.
For years. And he'll say, what are these pillowcases that are in frames hung on the wall?
My first kills.
Right. This is where the Russian was born, son. Twin Lakes Mobile Home Park in Illyria.
Oh, that's good.
Off of West Ridge Road.
It's so epic.
It's epic. Yeah.
But
for us, we've chosen to let Henry participate. But if he comes to me and he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a warlock this year. I'm like, hey, guess what? It's not happening.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Now you may ask yourself, isn't that kind of teetering with the potential of sin? But I love what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 5. We talked about this. Like, if you want to avoid sinful people, you're going to have to leave this earth.
Yeah.
If we avoid anything that could potentially lead to sin, we're going to have to die.
Yeah.
It's no different than taking Henry to a restaurant, when he's a teenager that has a bar in it.
Yeah.
And he sees people drinking and laughing and having fun. I'm exposing. Well, what is that? Well, that's a bar. Well, what are they drinking? Well, they're drinking alcohol. Well, can I have alcohol? No, you can't have alcohol. Why can I have alcohol? Well, because it can alter your mind if you have too much. Oh, what does that mean? And then they start to form. So,
totally.
And again, I understand and I get that we're kind of getting into the nuance of things, but
that's where you got to go, though.
But I think that continuity and consistency is really important.
Yeah.
But let me say, I've said all of that, but let me say this.
Yeah.
I'm in no way advocating that a person should celebrate Halloween. I'm in no way advocating that it is the right biblical thing to do that. If it is going to be a stumbling block to your faith, boy, you listen to that still small voice who knows what the Lord is doing.
Yeah.
Some sin is circumstantial. I've said this several times on the podcast, and I always give the example of sex.
Yeah.
The circumstance with which under you have sex can make it either sinful or can make it God's gift.
Right.
So sin is not necessarily certain. There are certain sins that aren't necessarily across the board. Like if you celebrate Halloween, then you are sinning. If you don't celebrate Halloween, you are sinning. I don't think we can make those things. I think that it is, like you talked about early on, kind of that personal conviction.
Well, I mean, that's even, I think, what Paul would say in 1 Corinthians 8 when he's talking about food offered to idols. So it's not that you're sitting down and eating like a pagan meal per se, but maybe you went to the marketplace and you bought some meat and it had been offered to idols. And he's saying like, hey, we all know there's only one God. So we don't need to be worried about some idol or something. It's not even a real thing. But not everyone has that knowledge. And by eating, are you causing someone else to stumble who's a newer Christian or who is still struggling with their, maybe they just got done practicing pagan worship to that idol and now you're eating that meat and they're like, dude, like that's wrong. And, so anyway, so that's not to say that, he's saying, it's technically it's okay. But if it causes someone to stumble, if it's harming someone by their conscience, or if there's a conscience issue there, then just don't do it.
All things are permissible, not all things are beneficial. Romans 8 was, kind of that launching pad for the Grays series. And so, if this causes someone to stumble, if you're new to your neighborhood and people are like, oh, you're a Christian and you celebrate Halloween, then maybe don't do it. At least don't do it in your neighborhood.
or like, we just got done saying, and I think that, what it comes down to is if you look into the history, you can find evidence that it was specifically pagan and evidence that it had nothing to do with paganism. But the reality is that no matter what it is, people can use it for evil. It could be Christmas, it could be Easter, it could be a bowling alley. I don't know. It could be anything. You can use anything for evil because sinners are going to sin, and people who are wanting to sin are going to find a way to do it. And so I think it has more to do with the people than it has to do with the festival itself in a lot of circumstances. But like you're saying, what if you know someone who literally just came out of witchcraft and they've been saved out of that, the Lord has saved them, but maybe a primary avenue that they practice witchcraft had something to do with Halloween. I don't know. So it's really important to think about.
As far as it concerns you, do everything you can to live at peace with everyone. And so if you have the information, that information, then you ask. And I think you bring up a really great point about the evil of bowling alleys. I think that we don't talk about that.
We don't.
Enough.
I mean, you and I talked about it and how we had to, it was borderline witchcraft to get as high scores as we've gotten.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the campaign I have for gargoyling bowling alleys. Like, I would like to gargoyle bowling alleys
so good.
Across the nation.
And no pumpkin.
This is the platform I'm running on.
Yeah, jack-o'-lanterns. Only turnips.
I promise to gargoyle
there it is again.
Every bowling alley from here to Pennsylvania.
Ask not what bowling alleys could do for you.
The answer is nothing. They're evil. Now, this is a great question. Thank you so much for asking this question. And it's so timely, obviously, because this year, again, this is one of the reasons that we offer Trunk or Treat here at Oak Christian Church, is that we feel it is a safe, family-friendly way to redeem that which may be considered by some or evil, or maybe even potentially have its roots in pagan practices. And so there's a way to redeem those things.
There's so much nuance to it. And I would just say this, if you end up landing where you feel like you can't participate in it, that we wouldn't think less of you.
No,
and what I would say is I would commend to you Reformation Day, the birth of the Reformation. Let's celebrate what Martin Luther did on that day and celebrate the Reformation of the church.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or go to Harvest Carnival.
Go to Hallelujah night.
Go to Jared's
Dress
house
up as a pirate and go and see some Bible characters.
We only dressed up like Bible characters. One year I was a pirate. I was like, who is the pirate in the Bible?
He was on the ship with Jonah. I don't know.
You should be calming the storm. What should be walking on the water for?
I will say this. They took this bigger room in the church and converted it into a cardboard box maze where you'd like go inside, and they built this. I remember it being pretty sick.
One year for VBS, they had one of the rooms, one of the offshoots where the kids would go in.
Yeah.
And they needed somebody to be Jesus.
Oh.
And Cheryl, Trooper, our children's director, was like, would you be Jesus? And I was like, I'm unreasonably uncomfortable with this. And she goes, well, no one will see you. She goes, we just need you to mimic, because it was a white sheet and then light, and they needed me to act out, being
Did you have to speak, or was it just just
miming?
Mimery?
Yeah, I was miming behind a white sheet.
Yeah. I've always thought you were really good at miming.
Most people do.
I always wanted to compliment you on your mimery, but I was always too nervous to bring it up because you're just so good at it.
Well, I think when you're in the presence of a great mime, that...
In the presence of a great mime. Could that be a movie or a book or something? I don't know.
I'm writing a movie called A Beautiful Mime.
Oh my gosh.
So needless to say, oddly enough, I did that. And what the kids didn't see is every time I acted it out, I was like crying.
Oh, really?
I really was, because I was put in that situation, because there was I think if I'm remembering this correctly, there was a tape playing of the clanking of the hammer on the nails and all that stuff, and I'm sitting there like jolting with it, and I was like weeping behind the sheet, and it was heavy duty.
Wow.
But yeah, it was good. Great question. Thanks for asking it.
Really good. Did you ever? Maybe we've talked about this.
Mime hero.
Did you ever? You know what Trip to Hell was, right? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
So you know about that. Have you ever heard of Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames? As another,
is that an 80s band?
I wish. No, it was a similar thing as Trip to Hell, but it was done like in churches and stuff. It's basically a play.
Okay. Yeah, no.
And I was just thinking, if you're asked to be Jesus, is that as prestigious, or is that as high pressure as getting asked to be the devil in both Trip to Hell and the other thing?
I don't know. Like, is that like they wait for the posting, like they do the auditions?
Yeah, right. They're standing there like, did I make it?
Right. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Trevor got the devil role this year. I don't know.
I don't know.
No one's ever asked me to be the devil.
What would that audition be like? Would it be like, who can sound most like a stereotypical like Satan?
It depends. And I think that you bring up an interesting point. I think that, part of what Hollywood and, entertainment culture has done is they've taken Satan and made him this terrifying character. I've said from the stage before, if you met Satan, you would love him.
Probably.
Yeah, you're going to be like, this guy's the life of the party. Look at this guy. Like, he's got great ideas. He seems to know what I like. Yeah. He's basically iTunes Genius on steroids, right?
That's right.
He makes suggestions like, hey.
Which is coincidentally the opposite of like the Spotify suggestions. I keep getting all this kid music that makes me want to, just throw my ears in the toilet.
Well, you probably use Spotify for
my children.
For your children, yeah.
Yeah, they've poisoned the well.
Yeah. Wow. Yes.
That's not all true. I do. Can we be really honest for a second?
What have we been doing this whole time?
Well, I've been lying.
Oh. I sensed it.
Do you ever, like when Henry was younger, you guys played like kid music, right?
Yeah. I mean,
like some,
kind
of,
at
least.
Yeah.
Okay.
He never really got into much of that.
Yeah. Well, he went straight to like Guns N' Roses and stuff.
He kind of did. He kind of did.
So there's this guy called Casper Baby Pants on Spotify and other places, but he does kid music, and like Addie and Judah love some of his songs. They'll ask for it. And I found that when I'm driving by myself, I'll sometimes put it on.
Yeah. Because you enjoy it, or because it reminds you of the kids?
That's a great question. It might be both.
Yeah.
Some of his music is actually really good and really catchy and gets in your head. And sometimes, for better or for worse, I'll get something stuck in my head. And maybe it's just that, if it's going to be in my head anyways, I might as well just listen to it. Maybe it's that. Maybe it is that I miss my babies.
It could be.
Could be. That's interesting.
Henry watches this show Blaze.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a, monster truck that can...
Yeah.
I got all kinds of issues with this show.
The anthropomorphic trucks.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. And the music is incredible.
Yeah,
like just unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we'll just throughout my day, I'm like, snowflakes are six-sided ice crystals. Like I'm just like,
oh, dude,
it's so catchy.
That's what happens with Daniel Tiger, man.
Yeah.
I get those songs stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Whew, boy,
good stuff.
Anyways, all right. Well, thank you for that question. Really good.
Yeah.
Let's move it on up. Hello, Neal and Jared.
You came in hot.
Did you like that?
Got a hot mic.
Hello.
Yes.
First, I just want to say how much I enjoy listening to the podcast, whether I'm working out or performing the mundane task of cleaning the kitchen. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking, like, are we really going to just read these compliments?
Yeah, big
absolutely
time.
We are.
I want people to understand how lucky they are.
That's true. Listen to the gratefulness of this listener.
Right.
Why haven't you submitted your compliments?
Did you see that thing with that pastor that was yelling at his church for not giving him a Movado watch?
What?
I'll send you the link.
Oh boy. Okay.
It went viral.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is it like legit? Like he's
legit.
Really being
he's
a,
really
a
upset.
turd?
Yeah, that they didn't buy him a Movado watch.
What is a Movado watch?
I think Movado's a brand. I think it's
like
just
expensive or something.
I think it's fairly pricey. Yeah. I don't know.
Like, why did you guys buy me a Casio? It would have lasted me 30 years.
Yeah.
On one battery. Okay. First, I just want to say how much I enjoy listening to the podcast, whether I'm working out or performing the mundane task of cleaning the kitchen. It has become a great addition to that time.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah. I think this podcast is a great balance of practicality, like offering recommendations for children's Bibles, as well as complexity as you elaborate on what was preached or address some of those topics you might not be covering in sermons, but are questions that many Christians have. You guys are also kind of funny. Wow. Whew, thank you.
If I had a nickel.
That's high praise. All right.
I know what you were trying to do.
It was terrible. In this week's, anyways, let's just keep going. Stop it. In this week's sermon, one of the things Neal discussed was sacrifice and the fact that something isn't a sacrifice if it is our leftovers or extras, but rather something that should cause some pain. Correct me if I'm not quoting that right.
Yeah.
While I agree with that, I'm wondering if there is ever a limit to sacrifice towards a specific person or persons. I worry that if I over-sacrifice, that the cost endured, I'm not exactly talking monetarily here, but more so the cost of my time, will build resentment in my heart toward that individual, which doesn't seem good or what the Lord would want. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts and what Scripture would say about this. Thanks.
It's a great question.
Really good.
This comes from, we're in a series right now called Psalms, and this past week was week 3. We talked about Psalms of Thanksgiving. Week before, we talked about Psalms of Lament, and then in the intro, where I kind of gave just a very quick bird's eye view of what Psalms is, and we talked about, worshiping God on all occasions, praising God on all occasions, rather, and praising God is honoring God, and praise involves sacrifice, and so I kind of went on this little tangent that I felt was important to go on, that sacrifice isn't just giving your leftovers. And I used the greatest example of sacrifice in history that will ever be, which is Jesus on the cross. And, giving to the point that it hurts. If you're giving out of leftovers or excess, whether it's time, money, ability, whatever it is, then you're not really sacrificing anything. Yeah. And so what this listener is asking is there a limit to that sacrifice toward a specific person? I worry that if I over-sacrifice, and that's in quotes, that the cost endured will build resentment in my heart toward that individual. And this particular listener speaking about more of time than money, but really any type of sacrifice.
Yeah.
So the question is there a limit to sacrifice? And the answer is sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes there is. I think the limit from sacrifice, though, can't come from your fear of sin. And what I mean is that the limit of sacrifice needs to be more centered around what is best for the individual that you're sacrificing for. And just like there are moments where it's okay to celebrate Halloween, or like we talked about in the Grace series, have a drink, watch a secular TV or show, there are times where it is good to sacrifice, but there are also times when it's not. And it's a lot of the same language that we've talked about. If your sacrifice to the individual, whether it's time or money, starts to cause harm in that person's life, either by means of enabling perhaps behavior. We'll just take a very simple example of somebody has lost their job and they need financial help. And so they, perhaps move in with you, and that starts to disrupt, your family. And so you start examining, okay, is this causing harm to my family?
Right.
Then you might need to reassess that sacrifice.
Yeah.
On the other hand, is it causing harm to the individual because they're under a roof, they've got food to eat, they've got, everything they need.
Yeah.
And so are you perhaps enabling laziness? Are they maybe not as proactive to go out there and get a job because they don't feel the pressure or the crunch of that? So if the sacrifice is, there's a difference between feeling sacrifice and the feeling that you're feeling is harm. And so if it's causing harm, if it's illegal, I think this one's a really important one.
Yeah.
Is if it's fueling illegal behavior.
Right.
If it's, that the sacrifice, causing them to violate God's law, not just illegal in the law of man, but if it's violating God's law in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
If it's counterproductive, all of this is very similar. I'm just using a lot of different ways or using a lot of different words to describe what this is. You need to really assess.
Yeah.
And so the time to not sacrifice is if it's causing those things. But if the sacrifice or the desire to limit sacrifice is rooted in I might become resentful, then I don't think that's the time to pull back. And I'm going to say a couple of different things in relationship to that. I want to go over to Matthew chapter 5. Snowflakes are so excited as crystals.
It's a nice song.
Growing bigger as they fall through the sky or ground. Rachel's screaming at the
Probably
right
sky.
Yeah,
fall to the ground or fall through the ground? Because it wouldn't be through the ground.
Well,
unless this is some kind of weird
post-apocalyptic snowstorm. Snow daggers are.
Snow daggers. Snow gamma rays.
Matthew 5:42. This is Jesus speaking. You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. This is very, very, if you've been in the church for a while, turn the other cheek. We know this language.
Yep.
And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. So that's pretty strong language from Jesus. And so the question is, are these a direct command, meaning that anytime somebody asks you for anything, you have to give it to them?
Yeah.
And that can't be the answer because, again, it can't violate God's law. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, can you get me some weed?
Right.
And you're like, well, I can't refuse the person anything.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're violating other parts of Scripture, and we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I think another example, someone steals your jacket. That doesn't mean that you don't file a complaint with the police,
Sure.
file a report with the police rather, and because that's an illegal thing. They're violating Romans 13. They're not submitting to the governing authorities where it's not okay to steal. I think the point that Jesus is making here is kindness. I think sacrifice and understanding that, because here's what comes immediately after that. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. He's showing us how to express love and kindness, and not to be selfish. I think that, one of the things we talked about in relationship to, a couple Sundays ago, as it related to sacrifice and giving, is that we have the ability to give more and we don't. So we have to take Jesus's words and then take the rest of his word and make sure that it fits within there.
Yeah.
But the idea of helping somebody to the point that it hurts is a very biblical idea. This particular listener writes these words, and I want to be careful because I analyze things and I don't want to project anything. But the language here is really important. I worry that if I over-sacrifice, that the cost endured will build resentment in my heart toward that individual. Well, I worry. Jesus has a lot to say about worry. We're right here.
Yeah.
Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious or worry about your life. What will you eat or drink, nor about your body? We're still in Matthew chapter 6. This is just a couple of chapters. And so the worry that sin might happen, the worry that you might build resentment, is not, I don't think, based on what we know of God's word, that's not the right motive to stop sacrificing for somebody, because you're not a prophet. You don't know what God's going to do. What if you sacrifice to the point that it hurts, and God honors your obedience to his word because the person really does have a need? It's not harming them. It's not counterproductive. It's not illegal. It's not causing damage to your family. And you don't build resentment.
Yeah.
You're like, we're like the Grinch. Your heart grows 3 sizes, not that this person has a small heart in any way, shape, or form. But just kind of taking that example, like the Lord does something, he takes that maybe hard as stone.
Yeah.
In this particular case, it's possible that this individual, if they're sacrificing time, may likely be thinking that it's going to pull time away maybe from their family.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to ask yourself, is it harming my family?
Yeah.
But then you have to ask yourself, well, isn't it a good example for your kids too, to show that level of sacrifice? And what we think might be harmful for our kids is not necessarily truly harmful for them. It's, I told Rachel sometimes Henry needs to feel a little bit of pain. He needs some trial. He needs that word no. You need that word no. I need that word no. That's part of how God grows us, is through trial. And so if maybe the kids don't get to go to Cedar Point because, Uncle Todd's living with them and it's just cost a little bit more money. And so, you tell your kids, like, listen, we needed to help Uncle Todd out, and so we don't have the money to go. Now, is that really harming your kids, or is that teaching them sacrifice? And so kind of assessing, what harm is. And the other thing that I'll say, and I guess I can close out with this, is motive does matter. You think about Paul's instruction to the Corinthians, and I think it's in Corinthians 9 where he's talking, 8 and 9, where he's talking about giving to the church specifically. And you look at the Macedonians, like they were like, please let us give, let us help. He talks about giving, out of a joyful spirit, not under compulsion. And so, examining your motive as well, I think is really important. Why are you sacrificing for this person? And if you are considering others as better than yourselves, and you're considering their needs, and you're taking Jesus' words in Matthew 6 and 5 and 6, and you're not going to worry about it, and you understand that there's a sacrifice and that you should be willing to give to anyone who asks, as long as it doesn't violate God's word, and you do your homework, then I think that sacrificing is certainly what the Lord calls us to, but that there are times and there are limits to that.
Yeah.
What thoughts say ye?
No, that's good. It occurred to me that kind of along those lines of, if you're worried to obey because it might lead to sin, well, that's a sin that you need to deal with now.
Right.
Probably you need to prepare yourself for that obedience. And if your reason for stopping obedience is because it's leading to you sinning, the thing to stop is not the obedience. The thing to stop is the sin. So you need to get to the root of that and figure out, why is it causing resentment? Now, the resentment might be coming from maybe an overcommitment. I mean, there is such a thing,
Oh, for sure.
I've had conversations with young dudes who are like 18, 19. I'm just like, dude, you are uniquely available to do church, to serve at your church, to serve other people, to work hard, to do all these different things. You don't have a family, you don't have kids, you don't have a wife. You are uniquely available in a way that you won't be for a very, very, very long time, or maybe ever again. So
stay here as long as you can.
That's not it at all.
I know,
it's saying maximize what you're doing now, because the season is going to last forever. And God willing, maybe the Lord's going to bring you a wife, and Lord willing, if you want kids, maybe the Lord's going to give you kids. Like all these different things that change the structure of your life and your ability to prioritize,
expendable
other
time.
Expendable time. Exactly.
Disappears.
Time towards other things versus your responsibilities. We all have responsibilities and commitments and things that we're called to conserve and steward. Time is one of those things. And so I think we've all been in that situation where you can be tempted to give a lot of time to someone who's in need, who is, time intensive because of maybe a trial they're walking through or a season that they're walking through. And that doesn't mean you stop being careful about how you use your time. You have to be winsome and thoughtful about all of that. But it's okay if it's a sacrifice. It's okay if there's a little bit of pain. It's not okay if it starts actually harming. It's one thing if, like your example was monetary, is like there's a monetary sacrifice when you bring someone into your home and you're caring for them and they're sharing the resources of the home because of the season of life that they're in. And so monetary, pain is one thing, that it might hurt a little bit, but it would be probably wrong if you would, impoverish your family unnecessarily, perhaps for someone else. I mean, that's case by case, but I can't speak into every situation, but we can think practically about these things.
If you don't care for your family, you're worse than an infidel.
Exactly.
So, you got to care for your family.
You think about, what your priorities are at any given time in life, and so it doesn't mean you stop being wise with your resources. It doesn't mean you stop being practical and realistic about the situation that you're currently living in.
Yeah.
We only have so much to give, but the question is, are we willing to give that?
Right.
Or are we greedy? Are we hoarding that? Like what are the motivations going on in our heart?
So much of it, it really does come to, idolatry, where we do elevate our time. We make our time an idol. We make our families an idol.
Sure.
This is something I really had to wrestle with, and still wrestle with. Like, I think about Henry all the time. I think about Rachel all the time.
Yeah.
Like, all the time. She sent me a text yesterday, a video of Henry, just one of those Blaze songs was on, and he was... The only word I can think of, and this is an old-timey word, was he was doing the boogie woogie. Like, he was in the 50s, somehow doing the boogie woogie, and I don't even know what that is. And if that's an offensive term, I'm super sorry. I don't really know what that means. But I mean, he was cutting a rug, and it was hilarious. And I instantly was like, I'm leaving here and going home to hang out with. And I'm like, no, you've got some things to do. So, because of Henry's health issues and all this stuff, like we've idolized him, and sometimes what we think, what feels like negligence to our kids, isn't really negligent. Like, is it negligent for me to leave work and go to the gym for an hour to work out and not go straight home and invest in my son? Is that the wrong thing to do? Is that neglect? Is that, and it isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't, but I wrestle with those things. That's how much of an idol my son has become, and something that I have to fight against, where I'll make decisions that are better for him than sometimes what I know is right in Scripture.
Yeah.
Trying to control things and not yielding, to the Lord's will in these areas. And so our time can become an idol. We become very, I think, protective of our time. And so as parents, as husbands, wives, when you're single, all of it can become an idol. Yeah. And so just being careful with that and recognizing, okay, am I not sacrificing here with this individual because I feel like I'm going to neglect some other responsibility over here, and that it really is negligent and not, that I'm feeling it, or is it really negligent? Am I overly involved and overly focused on these particular things?
Yeah.
So, but this is a great question. I'm glad somebody asked it, because I think that, there certainly are limits, but they need to be based on whether or not it's causing harm to the individual or perhaps individuals involved.
Yep.
And then, kind of what those limits are.
Cool.
I'm hot.
Yeah, it's warm.
It is. The air is busted in the office right now.
It is. I was trying to say earlier, I think maybe Bob is secretly sabotaging it so he doesn't have to keep using that personal heater in his office. Keep the door shut.
Yeah.
He wants to share the gospel of tropical weather with all of us.
I don't know what's going on, but I don't know.
You ever go in his office and he's got that thing cranking and you're just like,
Do you feel the freedom to tell him to turn it off? Have you asked him?
I've never felt the need to.
Okay.
I don't.
I have felt the need to.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, hey, shut that off.
Yeah. I would if I started feeling like oppressed by the heat.
That's what I feel like.
Sometimes for me though, it's kind of like, hey, this is a chance for me to get to really enjoy who Bob is, you know. But if I'm in there for 10 minutes, that's one thing. If I'm in there for an hour, I'd probably be like, I'm turning into a raisin. Help me.
I can't. It was just, I get when we were working out together, he'd want me to go in the sauna with him.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "You want to go?" And I'm like, "Not even the slightest."
Have you ever enjoyed the sauna?
Never. I've never enjoyed.
Does it just stress you out?
A sauna?
Like
I don't.
The heat.
Yeah, it doesn't stress me out.
Not stress, but like kind of it's
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For me, like I hate. Henry again loves fans, and so like the other night, temperature's weird now. It's hot during the day, it's getting cold at night,
right?
So the air's not running at night, but the heat of the day is still in the house.
Yeah, so it gets stuffy,
right? It gets stuffy, and so I stumble into his fan room and I pull a fan out, and a poor kid throws his routine out. He comes, and he's like, "So, I mean, what's this doing here? Like, why did you? I mean, I don't remember you asking to grab the wind machine." And I'm like, well, I was very hot, so I used it last night. And he was like, interesting. And I'm like, fans are meant to keep you cool, like they have a purpose. Where for him, it's just like a mechanical thing that he enjoys. And so, but yeah, I can't. I'm miserable. Yep. I can't function.
Yep.
And so, like, if I get to the point in his office or any office, anywhere, if I start getting high, I get a little bit anxious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't think right now. This is not gonna. Like, I can't.
We're the kind of the same way.
Yeah.
So you can imagine being in Texas, and everyone would keep their house at like 68 or not 68, 78.
I couldn't.
I'm just like, this is horrible. So I'm sweaty everywhere I go.
Is that beard making you hotter?
No,
not too bad. Okay.
No. I have a little air conditioner in there.
What's the plan with that? You going?
I have no idea. I just went to get it trimmed because I thought I'm getting a haircut. I might as well let him trim it. It's kind of, beard trims are becoming steak for me.
Did they trim that?
Apparently. They did some. It's just not quite the way I would do it.
Okay.
And that's what I mean. Like, I'm getting to the point where anytime I get a steak like out, and it's not often, but every time the last couple of years, if I go out and get a steak, I'm just kind of like, I would have done it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of, I think I'm at that point with my beard where I'm like, unless I find someone that's just like nailing it in the beard department,
Bob goes to
I'm just going to have to start doing it myself.
That place over in,
that's where I went.
Okay. Yeah.
The rail. Yeah.
Railway.
The railway, yard. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, it was okay. My haircut's always fine, but it just seems like they're never really sure what to do with my beard, and it's different every time. And I'm just like, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's just gonna be haircuts from now on. I thought about, and I'm sad I didn't do it for my vacation. The first day of vacation, I'm going to shave everything but my gigantic mustache because my beard had gotten pretty big at that point. And I just wanted to live with a giant mustache, but I didn't do that. And it got like halfway through the week, and I'm like, I'm going to have to be back in the office.
Right. It's just fulfilling in time.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't want to look like a doofus.
Walrus.
We're talking about my
out here. Out here.
Oh man.
Yeah, these mics. I can't get comfortable today. I keep adjusting. I don't know what my thing is. I think it's because I'm hot.
It's the heat, dude.
Sure.
You're a sweater, right?
Yeah. Oh, big time.
It's like I could be in the coolest room and I'm a little sweaty anyway. So to introduce some uncomfortable heat is just not good.
I say 1,000 times on Sunday because people come in for a hug or something like that on Sundays, and I'm like I'm drenched with sweat.
I'm hoping people have learned that about me.
Yeah.
Is when I'm done playing, I'm like usually just a mess. So don't try and touch me.
Yeah.
So, anyways, well, this was a good time. These were good questions.
Yeah,
I'm glad we had some
these.
Fun introduction to the festivities of the fall. I think getting to discuss some of these things. I'm getting excited about the cold
first
weather.
Day of fall is this week, right?
Is
the
it?
22nd, I think.
Do we do fall back soon?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I don't know.
What is that one? That's where you lose?
No, that's where you.
Oh, you gain?
Well, it's fall back, so you get another hour.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I like that one too, right?
Let's see. First day of fall is one of these days we should play that game. I've seen it on late night shows. What's the last 5 things you searched?
Oh boy. That sounds interesting. I don't know. Where's daylight savings? I'm just gonna Google.
How many people are screaming?
That's what's on my Google page.
Show the camera.
It's
just a pile of pancakes.
Can you see that? Is it gonna focus? There it is. Pancakes.
Yeah.
Well, Addie wanted pancakes, and so
yeah.
And I said, "Do you want French toast?" This was on vacation, or this was the tail end of vacation. I was like, "Do you want French toast?" And I showed her some pictures, and she's like, "Oh, okay." And so I make French toast, and she's like, "I don't want this." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool."
Yeah.
So
Rachel had my phone last night, so I'm looking at my Google history.
November 6th is fallback. Does that seem late?
Fall back is November 6th. First day of fall is September 22nd.
Yeah, but fall back.
I don't know.
That seems really late to me.
I don't know.
Anyways, go ahead.
Rachel is searching nail salons.
Oh.
And then here's me.
Yeah.
Why do so many pro bodybuilders use a 5-day split?
Do you want to hear mine?
And then what was this?
Yeah.
Huntington Bank contact information.
Oh, there you go.
8 steps to do after losing your wallet. Like,
oh no. Mine is, well, I just did fall back. My most recent one was, why didn't Queen Elizabeth like Princess Diana?
This is great.
And then eggs and bacon costume.
Mine is it's Huntington Bank, Avon Police Department, because I called the cops.
Yeah, just to let them know.
And I the dispatcher.
Yeah,
I'm like, I can't talk today.
It's okay.
The heat.
The heat.
I lost my wallet. Oh, this is so good. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh,
that's
man.
Good. I don't know, and I'll make this the last thing, then we can hop off. Did you ever listen? You're a podcast guy to some degree, right?
To some degree, yeah.
Do you know anything about the Serial podcast from early 2010s?
I think I do, but I think I might know that from you.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So season 1 is exploring this case, this murder case from 1999 of the 17-year-old boy, Adnan Syed, who was accused and convicted of killing his ex-girlfriend, Heyman Lee.
Okay.
And so that happened. And then 11 years later, this journalist gets approached by some of the family members and some stuff, and is like, hey, you should investigate this. And so she creates this podcast called Serial. And this is the first season is focused on this case, where the deeper in she gets, the more like questionable all the evidence is. All these questions are raised. Like, what is this? This is crazy. So anyway, so it ends basically saying like, there's some hopes for, his early release at some point, but right now there's none of that. There is then I don't know if it was Netflix, but there's a documentary put together about him and about that case after the fact, I think in like 2014, which was really good. 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. Maybe later. I don't know. But anyways, so I wake up to news that Adnan Syed has been released from prison and his conviction has been vacated, and now the state prosecutors of Maryland they have 30 days to press the case or to completely dismiss him. And it was actually the prosecutors who filed the motion to get him out of prison because they re-examined the evidence and found that there were 2 other suspects that were never ruled out in the original case, and that the case against him is so flimsy or whatever. But anyway, so I've been thinking about that a lot today. Like, this dude just got out after 20-something years, in prison, 23 years.
Wow.
And he's in his 40s, and he's been locked up since he was 17.
Yeah.
And what is going on? Like, it's just crazy. So anyways, like, I've been texting Sarah a little bit today about it, but there's this debate, like, did he do it?
Sure.
Because it's so unclear. Like, they did not prove it beyond, reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And so it's just an interesting debate. So I didn't know if you had listened, but I'd recommend it to anyone just for if you're into stuff like that, and it's, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating look into the justice system and some of the craziness that can happen sometimes. But anyway, so Serial season 1, I believe the year was 2011, but I could be wrong. 2011, 2012, something like that. So.
Well, cool.
I wanted to tell you about that.
Yeah, no,
that was my most recent.
Any other podcasts you want to recommend our listeners?
Hardcore History.
As
always. Very good. Yeah. So the most recent, so this guy, Dan Carlin, some people know the name. He's done a lot of stuff. He does another podcast called Common Sense, but he's a well-known podcaster. But he does these long series on different things. Like, he has a really well-known series of podcasts on World War I. It's only 6 episodes, but each episode is like 5 hours long.
Yeah,
it's amazing. So his most recent one is called Supernova in the East, and it's about the Pacific the war in the Pacific in World War II, and so I eat that stuff up.
Oh,
and you're just kind of like, man, this is your subscription to history.
It is. That's why Jared's brought to you by history. All the things that have happened that have been cataloged over time. History.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our listeners. If you have questions, we encourage you to submit them to podcast@hopechristianchurch.com. You see that?
That was gargoyling.
You were.
Yeah.
That was good. You're fantastically handsome compared to gargoyles.
So. Oh, boy, I got to tell you.
And most people, to be honest. There you go.
You just.
No. Yes. Anyway, so podcast@Hope Christian Church is the email address, or you can submit questions by text to 440-HOPE-222. Did it feel like we were just like really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 30 podcast episodes later.
Yeah. I mean, we are just like, it's our 30th anniversary.
We are like peas and carrots.
Yes.
Jenny.
Oh.
Come on, dude. Are you serious?
I don't know. I feel like your impressions have been hard today.
It's the heat, dude.
What was the...
No, stop. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you.
More podcasts.
Stop it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.